All right, in this video, we're going to do an advanced list building tutorial inside of Apollo. That way you can build high quality and accurate lead lists that you can run outbound campaigns towards. For a little bit of context, I've been using Apollo for close to 3 years at this point and have scraped probably millions of leads off their platform again up to this point, which has allowed us to send 5 million cold emails and generate over 2,500 sales meetings. So in this video, I'm going to show you more specifically 2 different frameworks that I like to use. First is a more simple framework. This is one where if you have a more broad lead list, you'll be able to scrape a lot of people within that industry. And then we're going to do a more advanced and narrow list building framework. That way you can reach out to more niche and more targeted audiences if you have a really small sliver of the market you're trying to hit. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. All right, so diving into Apollo, if you're watching this video, you probably already know what Apollo does, but in case you don't, it's basically a sales engagement platform that lets you scrape leads, reach out to those leads, monitor the analytics, create workflows, and do it all inside of one central platform. Now for this video, I'm going to be talking specifically about the list building component of Apollo. And also, if I sound a little congested, it's because I am. So hopefully you can forgive me and tolerate my voice. And so I just really want to make sure I get this out to you here. So first, before I even dive into the frameworks, I want to talk through Apollo's filters and the different ways you can filter in their platform. You can see on the left-hand side here, these are all the different filters that they have. If you press this more filters tab on the bottom, you can actually get a lot more filters that they have. Some of these are more specific on whether or not you're engaging them and where they are in your pipeline, but you can also do a bunch of different things on the persona level, the company level, like their job title, their location, their employee headcount, their industry, their technologies, funding, job posting. You can do buying intent, employees by department. There's all kinds of different stuff here, and they have 225 million records in their database. So there's tons of people you could potentially reach out to. When you apply these filters, you can get pretty big lists if you're trying to engage people for outbound. So now I'm going to dive in, and I think the best way to do this is just to show a real example and to walk through one of the frameworks as I'm doing it. So the first framework we're going to cover together here is the simple framework. This is if you want to build a more broad general list and if you're trying to reach out to a pretty wide industry. So the example I'm going to give here is we're going to be building a list of CEOs that work at marketing agencies in the United States. So this is a very general list. We're just reaching out to people who run the company. It has to be a marketing company and they live in the US. So the 3-step framework I like to use for this is number 1, define your criteria, which I already did in this example. Number 2, load the filters inside Apollo. And then number 3, check for quality and adjust as needed. So step 1, build out your criteria. That's exactly what I showed in this example. So you watching this at home, I would go down on a piece of paper or on a Google Doc and define every criteria about the person you're reaching out to. Their headcount, their job title, their location, basically all the stuff Apollo has here on the left-hand side, and define that going into this so you can understand what filters you should be using and what filters you shouldn't be using. So first, define that, which we already did in this example. And the next step is loading it into Apollo. So in this case, we're going to start off with job title. I want to reach out to CEOs. And so this is very simple. You go to the job titles tab here. You can go to the include section, and then we're going to type CEO. Great thing about Apollo, they're smart enough to know that if I type CEO, that also means Chief Executive Officer. So they have this filter here. You can see include people with similar titles. So for example, if you're reaching out to CEO, they know to do Chief Executive Officer and all the different permutations of that keyword inside of the job filters here. So if I want to reach out to CEO, I just put CEO. I can also put Chief Executive Officer, but that's just going to be the same overlap. I can also throw in similar titles, like for example, owner. If I throw an owner here, this takes this list from 2.2 million people to 5.8 million people, and you can keep going on and on. Now, if you're talking about specific decision maker titles or anyone that runs the company, there's all kinds of different titles. There's CEO, owner, founder, managing partner, managing director. There's all these different titles, but again, for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to do CEO. If you want to get a whole list of a bunch of different titles you can reach out to, you can actually go under this tab here and click into management level and departments and job functions. So if I go under departments and job function and I want to say, for example, reach out to all the different C-suite titles, I could actually remove this inclusion here and instead check the C-suite box, and it's going to include every C-suite title, which might be chief operating officer, it might be chief revenue officer. If you want to reach out to all those people, we can do that. You can also filter by management level. So owner, founder, C-suite. This also gets at a lot of the same stuff. So in this case, I might check these boxes instead. So that's job title. The next thing, in this case, we're going to filter for marketing agencies. The reason why I say this is simple search is because Apollo has a marketing filter. So if I go into the industries tab here, I can type marketing. Now, if I type marketing, it brings up marketing and advertising. Now, this isn't going to be 100% accurate because in this case, let's say we're reaching out to marketing agencies. Not every marketing and advertising company is an agency. So there might be SaaS platforms that are tagged as marketing and advertising. There might be like a billboard company. It's not exactly an agency, but they do marketing and advertising. And so we can add keywords on top of this to filter it down further. But let's just start with this for now. You can already see that there's an agency here. This one's called Goose Digital. I would imagine that's an agency. This one says media in their name. They're probably already an agency too. And so this is just a really simple way, just throw in the industries. And then the other piece we're going to do here is location filtering. Now we can filter by contact location. So that means we want the owner or founder to be in the US. We can do account HQ location, which is basically saying, I don't care where the people reaching out to are located. I do care where the company is. And if you want, you can layer on both of them. So I can put under contact location, United States. And if I want to make sure that their company is also based in the United States, I can do that here as well and put United States. In most cases, the founder is going to be located in the same area that the company is. But if you want to throw those both in, you can do that. That takes us from 115,000 down to 91,000 people. So there's 25,000 or so contacts where their company HQ is in a different location from where they are. So this is just an example. So now, again, we have the titles put in, we have the location put in, we have the industry put in. The next thing we want to do here is check to make sure that this list is accurate and check for quality. Now, again, I'm not going to do all of this on this video because this would be really tedious and I don't want this to be a 3-hour long video. But the way that you do this is by clicking into your list and just trying to see if they meet your criteria. So our goal was marketing agencies. We didn't layer in any agency specific keywords. So I already know there's going to be some billboard companies, some swag companies. There's all kinds of other stuff that's going to fall in here. But the way that you check this is by clicking through each one of these and seeing if they're a fit. So I actually also like to go to a deeper page because Apollo sorts by relevance. So they might feed you leads that look more accurate up front, but then you go later into the list and you realize it's not quite as accurate. So the way that I would do this is go click into all these and see if they're accurate. Now, I already know that this probably isn't an accurate list. The way I can make it sure that there's more likely to be agencies in here is I can add another keyword in here like agency, because if you think almost every marketing agency, it's going to say agency somewhere in their name or description or whatever. And now you can see all these say agency in them. And so they're much more likely to be an agency. Again, I'm trying to keep this short so I can go on to a more advanced example, but this is how you can build a super simple list in under 10 minutes doing exactly what I did here. All right, so now that we talked about a simple example, we're gonna do a more advanced example. So the example I'm gonna do here is we're gonna be reaching out to C-suite and other related decision maker titles. We're also gonna be reaching out to companies that are doing more than $1 million a year in revenue and our Google Ads PPC marketing agencies. That's going to be the real tough part to filter, and are in the USA. So we're going to build this list. This is going to require a lot more steps, and it's going to show you how you can build a more advanced style list. So I'm just going to kick things off. I'm going to read through the steps really quickly. Don't worry if you don't understand them. I'm going to show them step by step, and we're going to do an example of actually building this list. So step 1, we're going to build a list of ideal companies. Step 2, we're going to write down their keywords and industries from Apollo. Step 3, we're going to input the keywords and industries into the people's tab. Then we're going to add in all the other criteria. In step 5, finally, we're going to check for quality. So let's do an example of this. I'm going to go over into the companies tab to start, like I said. And then the first thing we're going to do is build a list of ideal companies. This is the first step. I like to start with these more advanced company types, like for example, Google Ads, PPC agencies, and actually go off and find a handful of examples of these. That way I can plug them into Apollo, harvest the data that Apollo finds, and then re-engineer that into Apollo so that we can find more of them. So hopefully that makes sense. By the way, they also have a lookalike feature list. I like doing this process manually because it gives me a little bit more flexibility on all the different criteria I'm trying to build. So anyways, let's just kick this off. So to start, we're building Google Ads marketing agencies that do PPC. So how am I going to find a list of these people? First, I'm just going to go to Google and type Google Ads PPC agency. So I'm just going to Google this and I'm going to grab as many of these as possible. So I'm just going to click the first 5 or 10 or so. The more of these you can find, the better. If I can get a huge list, that would be awesome. So I'm just going to grab all of these and then I'm going to go into the companies tab here and I'm going to go into the companies tab in the companies tab and press this include exclude list of companies. And I'm just going to start pasting URLs. So basically what I'm doing here is just grabbing all these different companies that are likely Google Ads agencies, because we just Googled Google Ad agency. It's a lot of Google. And we're just plugging them into Apollo. So I'm basically trying to see, all right, these are 5 or 10 good examples of companies. Let's see what criteria pops up whenever we throw them into Apollo. So there's 6 of them. I'm gonna press save and search. Apollo might not have all of them in the database. You can see here are 6 different companies. So awesome. Now I have 6 different companies to write down the industries and keywords from. So again, we're just throwing these all at Apollo and saying, what are you saying these guys are? And then let's use your own terminology and throw it back into your people tab. So what we can notice here, the 2 things I'm looking for are the industries and the keywords specifically. Now, you can also take a look at the headcount, right? If you're like, hey, these are 6 perfect examples of companies I want to reach out to. Awesome. You just found out they're between 10 and 1,800 employees. So if that's useful, you can throw that in. But anyways, here's our list of companies. The first thing that I want to note is the industries. And so what ends up happening a lot of times, I'm doing marketing agencies and it looks like every single marketing agency is using this marketing and advertising filter, or at least the 6 of them here. If you're reaching out to a different audience, let's say supplement brands, there's a bunch of different industries they might be in. Apollo has like a health and wellness industry. They have a retail industry. They might fall into another industry. So in this case, it's really simple. They're all 6 in the same industry. But if you're doing this for a different audience and you plug in 5, 10, however many companies and you see a bunch of different industries, you're going to want to write them all down. So in this case, there's just 1. So it makes our life a lot simpler. But let's say some marketing agencies, for whatever reason, use the industry online media. Apollo has a industry called online media for context. So if some people use that, you're going to want to write that down too. We're going to use that for later. The second thing we're looking for is keywords. We want to try and find keywords that as many of these have that would indicate it's this specific type of business. So to be a little bit clearer on what I'm saying, you can see here, this has the keyword web design, but that doesn't have to do with the fact that they're a Google Ads agency. That shows that they also do web design. I'd imagine, and as you can see here, there's a lot of keywords like Google Ads and AdWords. If a company were to have these keywords, they could only be a Google Ads agency. So for example, if it says marketing and advertising and Google Ads or AdWords, they're going to have Google Ads as a service. So we're not looking for all the keywords. We're looking for the industries that they're a part of, and then we're looking for the keywords. If they were to have this keyword, they would have to be this type of business. And the way that we're sourcing the keywords is not just by guessing, and we could do Google Ads as a keyword, which is pretty straightforward, but actually going inside of real examples. So you can see Google Ads, Google AdWords. I would think to put Google Ads, for example, but Google AdWords is another example here. You can see they do SEO, social media. Google Ads management is another thing, PPC management. So these are all different types of keywords that we want to be writing down. Now, again, the keywords you want to write down when you're building these more advanced lists after you source a few good examples are keywords that only your target market would have. I'm repeating this multiple times over because someone's going to watch this video and they're going to say, oh, it says Facebook ads here. Let's plug in Facebook ads. That doesn't mean they're a Google Ads agency. If they do have Google Ads or AdWords or search marketing, that could be another example, that would heavily indicate that they are a fit. So step 1, load in a bunch of companies. Step 2, take note of all the different criteria here. If these people are also a headcount fit, great. Now I know what headcounts I should be looking for. Write down the industries, write down the keywords, and take note of that. So pretend you took note of that. I'm taking note in my head. And if you're doing a more advanced list, you're going to have to take more notes here. This is a more advanced list, but this is already pretty straightforward. I didn't want to do something insanely complex and then lose a bunch of people because we're getting too deep into the rabbit hole. Anyway, so step 1, we built a list of ideal companies. Step 2, we wrote down their keywords and their industries. In this case, there's only one industry, but if there's multiple industries, you'd write them all down. And then keywords that would indicate that they're that specific type of company. So there's AdWords, Google Ads management. We wrote those all down. Now we're going to go back to the people tab and we're going to write all of that in. So we're going to go over here to industries and we're going to type marketing and advertising. All of the Google Ads agencies, or the ones I looked at in this example here, had the keyword Google Ads. Now, some of you at home might be saying, well, that's obvious. In this case, it is pretty obvious. But for example, AdWords might not have been an obvious keyword that would indicate that they're a Google Ads agency, that if we throw that in, that gives us a little bit more. Or we can throw in PPC management. In this case, I'm saying Google Ads PPC. Maybe PPC pulls in another type of PPC you don't want, but let's assume that's all the same in this case. So we found the industry they're a part of, we found the keywords. Now, this is still relatively simple, but I didn't want to do a super complicated example. So that's step one. If they have the industry marketing and advertising, which a bunch of companies do, but now these ones are specific ones that have Google Ads and AdWords and PPC management. Awesome. Now we're going to want to input the rest of the criteria. So first, these are Google Ads agencies for the most part. We're going to do a quality checking thing at the end. Now we're going to want to add the different job titles, location, industry, and all the other stuff. So we're going to go in here and I'm going to go into location and we're going to do contact location as USA. Again, pretty straightforward. The next thing I'm going to do here is talk about company size or revenue. Now, some of you at home might say, hey, Matt, there's a revenue filter inside Apollo. Why aren't you using that? I don't like to use the revenue filter. The reason why is because revenue in any database that I'm aware of is mostly an educated guess. So my understanding is that Apollo is doing some sort of calculation where they're looking at their site traffic, they're looking at their headcount, they're looking at their industry, and they're making a guess on revenue. The reason why I'm saying guess is because revenue data, at least in the United States, is private data. So unless you're a Fortune 500 public company, in that case, you're publishing quarterly reports saying what your revenue is. In almost every database, revenue is just kind of like a guess metric, and I like to have more control over it by using headcount. The reason why I use headcount is because headcount is public. Whenever someone goes on LinkedIn and has 10 people at their company on their LinkedIn, you can be pretty sure that they have 10 employees versus the revenue filter. I don't have as much flexibility over. So I like to use employee headcount to deduce revenue. So in this case, if we want to reach out to companies doing more than $1 million a year in revenue, sure, I'm sure there's companies that have 2 employees, 3 employees, 5 employees that are doing $1 million a year in revenue, but most of them probably aren't. However, if someone has 10 employees or 20 employees or 30 employees, I can safely assume that they're doing $1 million a year in revenue because their payroll is probably close to $1 million a year. So what I like to do instead is use employee headcount. So if I want to filter for $1 million a year in revenue or more, I can go in here and add the different headcounts. Now, again, I might lose out on some people, but at least I can be sure. Now, one other thing you can do that can be pretty helpful is to use something like ChatGPT and ask it and say, hey, can you tell me what the average revenue per headcount is in this industry? So that's what I'll do here. I want to reach out to marketing agencies that are doing more than 1 million a year in revenue. Can you tell me what the average revenue per headcount is in the marketing agency space? Now, it's going to give you some rough estimates. If we want to make sure for sure that they're doing more than $1 million a year, we're probably going to want to overshoot this. So again, you can use Apollo's data. You can use the revenue filters. I personally like the headcount filters a little bit more because it gives me more flexibility and lets me use data that I know is typically more accurate. So I'm going to let this load here for a second. All right, so ChatGPT just loaded, and now it's giving me the average revenue per headcount by companies in the marketing and advertising space. You can see publicly traded firms, it's about 300,000 per employee. Broad sector, 47,000, boutique mid-size, 130,000, smaller is about 85,000 per employee. So if we want to reach out to marketing agencies doing more than $1 million a year, then it's about 100 to 150 headcount per employee, which means about 10 employees, right? Or we could say 7 or however much. But this is a general benchmark, and I like to use this a little bit more because it gives me more flexibility. So if I want to be pretty confident, I can do 11 and 20. If I do more than 20 employees, I can be almost certain that they're doing more than $1 million in revenue. So I can either select all these boxes, or I can use the custom employee range here. So I could just put anything over 10 employees. That'll pull in people of all different company sizes, which you might not want to do. Maybe you want to cap it at a certain company size. We're just going to leave it for now. And that's how you filter for revenue. So we talked about location. We talked about specific industries, specific keywords. This is a relatively simple example. If you're reaching out to like supplement companies or something like that, there might be more keywords, more industries you might need to use. And then now we're going to do job titles. So again, if we want to do just a super basic one, we can put CEO. But you and me both know that CEO probably isn't the only decision maker title that you can use. So one of the ways you can do this is by using the management level and departments and job function feature down here. Or another way you can do this, again, leveraging ChatGPT, is that you can ask it for a list of all the different titles you can reach out to. So I'm going to use another example here. I want to reach out to decision makers at marketing agencies. please, for my AI automation company, can you tell me a list of all the different potential decision makers that could be relevant? Please output this as a comma separated list. I'm going to tell you why we're doing comma separated lists here in a second. And while ChatGPT loads, I'm going to show you the job titles thing. So we already went through this. There's a simple section here. You can include job titles individually, or I can cross layer. Let's say, for example, I want to reach out to all the decision makers that had a director or higher seniority in, let's say, operations. I would tick this operations box. I could do director, head, VP, partner, and it's going to pull in all the different seniorities. So it's going to be head of operations, director of operations, VP operations. You can throw them all in like that, and it's going to output them in a list here. And you can see operations, you can see it's already pulling in other titles that might not directly say operations, like this one says digital strategy. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of using this. I like to more use what I'm going to show you here in a second with like ChatGPT to filter this out more, but this is one way you can do it. The other way is by building a list. The reason why I said comma separated list, the really cool thing is if you have a comma separated list, you can go to this include job title section here, paste all these in, and it'll make actual different cards for each one of them. So it'll input it properly if you make it a comma separated list. So you can see CEO, owner, founder, principal, owner, CMO, head of marketing, director of marketing. There's all these different titles. Now, I would probably want to refine this out more. I don't think that vice president of innovation might not be a direct title. Head of analytics. Maybe I don't want to reach out to the people. Maybe I do. Your job, if you're watching this at home and you want to replicate this, would be to prompt it a little bit heavier to try and get the exact output you want. In this case, I'm just dumping a huge list into this, but now you can input this directly into Apollo. And now I have this huge list of all these different titles I could reach out to. Now, if I want to get more specific, I could say, hey, ChatGPT, remove account director, because I don't think that would be a relevant one, or head of client services. Again, if we're doing an AI automation offer, that might not be relevant, but this is one way you can dump a bunch of job titles in. So again, reviewing our framework, we built the ideal list of companies, we grabbed their keywords, we input them into the people section, we added in all the other criteria, like all the decision maker titles, employee, headcount. This helps filter for revenue because that's why I've seen it be more effective, and basically everything else. Now, the last thing that we want to do is check for quality. So we built this big, beautiful list. We have these job titles. More realistically, I'd want to go through and clean these up a little bit more, but we're going to try and keep this video short. The last thing that we want to do is check for quality. So again, zoom all the way out. We have this list built. Actually go ahead and click through some of these people. Like literally inside of Apollo, I can click on their names. I can click on their LinkedIn accounts. What I would recommend, and this is an exercise that we do, click on the specific profiles, click on 5 of them, 10 of them, 20 of them, and see if it's accurate. If they're not accurate, then figure out why not. So let's say I look here, right, and I'm selling AI operations, whatever I'm selling. And I say, hey, why is paid media falling in here? I don't want to reach out to people that are responsible for the fulfillment of the work. So then I'm going to go through here. I might try do Control F and type in paid media and see that paid media director, head of paid media manager. Let's just say these people aren't relevant. I can click on these individually and it'll remove them. And then now this person should hopefully be gone from the list. Let's wait a couple seconds and see. Now we can see this person's gone from the list. So there's no magic to trying to get your list 100% perfect. Really, all you do is you put in all the criteria that you think would be relevant and then check the list, read through 10 of them, see if they're accurate. If they're not, ask yourself why not. Ask yourself why this company is getting pulled in. If you realize SaaS platforms are getting pulled in here, maybe you have to put a negative keyword saying software. Keeping in mind though that there might be a Google Ads agency that says that they specialize in helping software companies, and so that might go against you. So again, these are all the little nuances. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and ultimately a lot of this stuff comes down to throwing a list of ideal companies in, pulling out the criteria, and then doing a lot of guessing and checking to make sure it's accurate. The last thing you can do to make these leads ultra accurate is to use AI to actually scrape these leads websites and their titles, and then you can have it score and say, is this lead accurate or not? So one way you can do this is natively inside of Apollo. You can actually research with AI, and so I could run a custom AI prompt where I say, hey, I want you to tell me if this lead is accurate or not. Here's their criteria. Here's what an accurate lead looks like. Here's what an inaccurate lead looks like. And then you can save and run this. Personally, I like doing this in Clay. This isn't a Clay video, but you can take these, plug it into Clay, and then run an AI prompt and say, hey, this is what an ideal client looks like for me. Check this website, check this person's profile, and tell me if they're an ideal fit. If they are, output true. If they're not, output false. Then you're gonna get a really, really clean list. There's only so much you can do in here, but this is how you get 90% of the way there, and then you can use AI to kind of filter this and clean this up after. All right, so that's how you build more advanced lists inside of Apollo. If you want to check out more videos on how to build lead lists, how to do anything cold email and outbound related, check out the other videos on this channel. And if you want to apply to work with us, you can check one of the links in the description below. See if we can partner with you to help you get more meetings with outbound. Appreciate you a ton, and see you in another video.